Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with another Game of Thrones news video. In these videos, I go on Watchers on the Wall, and I give my thoughts and opinions on the latest news to break. And we do have some very significant news. First of all, promotion of Game of Thrones Season 7 has begun. On May 16th, it was announced that there are going to be interviews coming out with Sophie Turner, Pilo Oblique, I don't know how to say his name, I apologize, Gemma Whelan, John Bradley, Rory McCann, Isaac Hempstead Wright, Aidan Gillen, Karis Van Houten, Liam Cunningham, Jacob Anderson, and Daniel Portman. And this is very significant because they're ramping up the marketing of Game of Thrones Season 7. They're starting with the interviews, and I can guarantee that we are going to be seeing a trailer within 2 weeks. Let me just break it down for you guys. The first trailer for Game of Thrones Season 6 was released 1 month and 15 days before the premiere. And if we follow that exact formula to Game of Thrones Season 7, we should expect a trailer on June 1st, 2017. However, I don't think they're going to follow this exact formula, and since they're ramping up the interviews and the marketing for the show, I guarantee you, I give you my word, from May 22nd to June 9th, we are going to see a Game of Thrones trailer. And me personally, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think we're going to see a Game of Thrones Season 7 trailer next week. Either it's going to be on a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Friday. So look out for that, and we'll see if I'm wrong. And secondly, there has been a ton of spin-off talk for Game of Thrones. Since we only got 2 seasons left, HBO is kind of scrambling together a plan for the future, because I guarantee since Game of Thrones is making so much money, they're going to milk this franchise as much as possible. And HBO came forward and made an announcement that they're working on 4 potential spin-off series in the works, and these series are being written by 4 different writers. And just to let you know, the writers are Max Borenstein, who wrote Godzilla and Kong Skull Island, Jane Goldman, who wrote Stardust, X-Men First Class, and Kingsman: The Secret Service, Brian Helgeland, who wrote LA Confidential and Mystic River, and Carrie Ray, who wrote Mad Men and The Leftovers. And I just want to say, everyone is putting out a title that they're working on 4 spin-offs, like they're going to put them in all at once. Game of Thrones is writing 4 spin-offs right now, and they're going to pick the best one, and that's going to be the one that they're going to lead with. We're not going to see 4 different Game of Thrones shows running at the same time. However, if one of these shows are really good, they may put it on the back burner for a potential new Game of Thrones series in 7 years or so down the line. And all of these shows being worked on are actually all prequels. There are no sequels being worked on whatsoever. And some of these series may not be centered around Westeros, and I think they're hinting that it may be something really fresh and new for Game of Thrones fans. And George R.R. Martin, the author of A Song of Ice and Fire, has come forward to share some information about these spin-offs. He said that one of the concepts that he pitched is actually being developed at this moment, and one of them is not. And George R.R. Martin has actually been in talks with all 4 of the writers to produce the best series possible. And they're really working hard on the series. They even brought in a 5th writer, which has been unannounced, who is also working on these projects. And what's interesting about these projects is that George R.R. Martin stated that there is going to be no Dunk and Egg story. They're not working on Dunk and Egg. And Martin gave a very good reason, because he has a lot more stories to tell about Dunk and Egg, and he doesn't want to do a series about them because he's worried that it's going to be the same scenario as Game of Thrones. They're going to catch up to the books, and then they're going to surpass George R.R. Martin. So George R.R. Martin really wants to tell the story of Dunk and Egg on his own, and that could be spun off in the future. But right now, Dunk and Egg is not the focus. He also said that they're not doing Robert's Rebellion. And this, to me, it hurts me, because I wanted to see a Robert's Rebellion, but at the same time, it does make a lot of sense. George R.R. Martin said that his series of books, by the end of it, will answer many questions, if not all the questions, of Robert's Rebellion. So there will be no point doing a series on it because there's no surprises that can be expected. Everybody already knows the plot of Robert's Rebellion, and we've already explored that in Season 6 of Game of Thrones, seeing the Tower of Joy. So that really begs the question, what kind of series are we going to get? What are they working on? And I wrote down a couple of ideas, and I want you to let me know in the comments section down below what your favorite is and what spin-off series you want. But there are a couple rules that I think they're going to follow. First of all, I don't think they're going to touch on any characters that we know. And it is definitely going to be a prequel. I think what they're going to do is build around a significant point in history in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. And I also think that they're going to stay true to the Game of Thrones format. I don't think we're going to see them follow one specific character. I think we're going to be seeing multiple perspectives from multiple different characters to create a more dynamic story. So first option, they could touch on the Long Night. It happened 4,000 years after the arrival of the first men. We see the battle for the Dawn, and we also see Bran the Builder building the wall, and that's how this series could end. I personally don't think that this will happen because it is very reminiscent of the current show of Game of Thrones that we are watching. And I think there isn't much story to tell around the Long Night other than the coming of the White Walkers, which has been the whole trademark of this whole series of Game of Thrones that we're watching now. Secondly, we could see the Andal invasion. This is where the Andals move into Westeros and they kind of take it over. And we see some conflict between the settlers of Westeros and also the remaining children of the forest. There's also the Doom of Valyria, where we could see how Valyria got destroyed, and we could build a story around that. But then there's my two last favorites, and I think that we will definitely see one of them as a series going forward. First of all is the Dance of Dragons. I think the Dance of Dragons is a really well-written story that could have a lot of drama. It's pretty much a civil war between two sides of the Targaryen house. And it is pretty much a 100% a Targaryen-focused story. So that takes me to my last option, which I hope gets made. And that is the Targaryen Conquest, Aegon's Conquest. I personally think this story has to be told, and this is the one that they're going to go with. And the reason why is that it involves all of the families that we love from the current series of Game of Thrones. And Aegon's Conquest was so significant in history, a lot of stuff come into play that we see in this series we love. So what this story focuses on is Aegon and his two sisters take over Westeros on their dragons, Vhagar, Meraxes, and Balerion the Black Dread. We see them make the typical red and black Targaryen banner. We also see how King's Landing was created when Aegon was going to war in Westeros. We see the destruction of Harrenhal. We see House Tully come into power. We see House Greyjoy come into power. And we see House Baratheon come into power after a fight called the Last Storm. We will also see House Gardner and House Lannister make an army of 55,000 men strong to defeat the Targaryens, but they eventually get defeated. And because House Gardner was eliminated, House Tyrell comes into power. We will also see Torrhen Stark bend the knee, and he's known as the King Who Knelt. And at the end of the series, we could see the Iron Throne being made, and the conflict between the Targaryens and Dorne. What's so great about this series is they would actually do Dorne right and do them justice. And this series could be phenomenal because it focuses on more than just the Targaryens. We could see the Stark perspective. We could see the Tully perspective. We could see the Greyjoy perspective and the Tyrell perspective all before they came into power. And this story is such a significant point in the history that it shaped the whole story of Game of Thrones that we're seeing right now. But I also think it is safe to say that we are going to get this no matter what. I have no doubt in my mind that we are going to be seeing more than one spin-off of Game of Thrones. And I'm willing to bet that these 4 series that they're writing right now, we're going to get one of them, and the other 3 are going to be put on the back burner for the future. I'm also willing to bet in 10 years we're going to be getting a Dunk and Egg story. When George R.R. Martin has finished it, it would be an excellent spin-off show after the new spin-off is completed. And I'm willing to bet in 20 or 30 years, HBO is going to pull out a Game of Thrones sequel. And what this sequel will entail is bringing back Jon Snow, Daenerys, if she survives, and all the other Game of Thrones characters to bring the next chapter in A Song of Ice and Fire. I personally think it's good to go back and explore the history of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire for a little bit, but I think it's going to get to the point where we're going to want to explore what's next. What's next in Jon's story? Or what's next 100 years in the future after the Game of Thrones series? But that's all I got to say about these spin-offs, guys. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you think. I think I've said that 100 times. But anyways, I'll be back with another video coming soon. I'll see you guys later.